Hello, everybody. Good morning or good evening, wherever you are. Welcome back to another episode of Max on Color. And thank you so much for joining me today. And today it will be just me because Diego is away. He's at NAB. Lucky him. and I hope everyone is doing fine. And thank you so much for joining me today. Today, we will talk about the new updates of Magic Bullet Looks. I think all of you probably already know that we just recently have an update in the entire Maxon One products, and one of the I won't say it's small because it's like really exciting to me. It's like a really some people may see it as a small update, but not to me. It's a really nice update to Magic Bullet Looks. We'll talk about that later. Let me do a small housekeeping for you, right? So I think if you already see it in the chat, Mr. Always On, hey, thank you for joining me. Thank you. Nice to meet you. And let me share my screen first, if I still know how to do that. There you go. So if you go to maxon.net/events, you'll be able to see all the upcoming events. So I think if you are already at NAB last week, or I think beginning of this week, you probably saw us at NAB as well. And I hope you stop by and say hi to Maxon team at NAB. On Monday, Dustin and Lionel will be back with the rendering with Redshift and makes your renders pop with Redshift. And I think this Friday, tomorrow, Hasi and Seth will be back with some amazing episode on, I think from the logo, you can already know what is coming, right? So if you like to see that, I hope you come and check Hasi and Seth out tomorrow. I think exactly at this time, right? And if you already saw the message in the comment before, you can get a free merchandise, okay? And the code to enter the shop, the link to the shop, by the way, you can find that in the chat. And the code for this episode is Redshift Renders, all capital. And once you put it into the shop, you'll be able to enter the shop. Let me show you the code. There you go. And you can choose one of these goodies, either the t-shirt or the beanies, and you can get like one of them, and you don't have to pay the price. You just need to pay for a small shipping cost to your address, right? Let me disable. There you go. And if you're wondering if this session is recorded, yes, this is recorded. And all the sessions hosted by Maxon Training Teams and Red Giant are all recorded. And you can find them in Maxon Training Team channels. And simply go to YouTube, type in Maxon Training Team, and you'll see like the whole video or the whole webinars that we delivered throughout the years, all right? And what's nice with all the recording is that they are all, let me open one, they're all timestamped. So for example, like the webinar that was done by Ellie on her project breakdown, everything is timestamped, so you can like go exactly to the topics that you want to hear. And that's great. And thank you, Dr. Sassi, for doing that. You're amazing. And yes, that's all. That's the housekeeping. And let us talk about the new update. Hey, Remo, thank you so much for joining, man. So let me show you the update of Magic Bullet Looks. But before, let me just talk to you a little bit about the update. The update of the Magic Bullet Looks, although it looks very simple, it is actually not very simple because it allows you to do a lot of like sophisticated things, as we will try today, right? So the update is that every single tools in Magic Bullet Looks now has individual strength slider. And not just that, the master sliders is now behaved correctly. But to see the update, to appreciate the update, let us check out the old versions of Magic Bullet looks. I have the privilege to running both Magic Bullet looks, the old one and then the new one on 2 different machines. So I want to show you that. Okay, let me change my camera first. Okay, and let me change my layout so you can see. Not that one. Hang on. There you go. So let me disable my name and logo so you can see the software. All right, I'm in Premiere Pro, and I want to show you the old versions of Magic Bullet looks, the one before the update, right? In these versions, not every single tool has the strength slider, the individual strength slider. So for example, here, if we open the tools drawer, if I just drop in every single tools from the selective category, like for example here, in the exposure, I just have like stops control. Oh, let me disable my camera. So you can see that, you know, in the exposure tools, you only have like one control, stops. That is nice, but, you know, how do you split the difference then? How do you want to, if you, for example, like the adjustment that you do in that specific tools, and if you want to split the difference, or you just want to use like 50% of it, how do you do that? You probably need to go out from looks and then reduce the strength slider from there, right? But then if you have like combinations of tools, that's not very nice, right? And then the second one, like the contrast tools, also it doesn't have strength slider. And spoiler alert, all these tools in the selective category, they are all don't have strength slider. Some tools that have like strength slider are the tools like Colorista, for example. Okay, and the other tools that have strength slider, perhaps does the new Optical Diffusion has it? No, the new Optical Diffusion don't even have it. And yeah, tools like my favorite tools, the film emulation tools, like Film Print, it has like the strength slider. So it varies. Some effects has its own strength slider, and some effects doesn't have it. And for example, and this is like the one that, you know, how do you call it? I think it's my challenge personally, because to me personally, whenever I am creating a look inside Magic Bullet looks, I like to create like a, you know, tiny adjustment, small little adjustment, and then stack it up together so that in the end, I will have like a really nice looks. So for example, with the old Magic Bullet looks, if I want to create a film emulation look, for example, right? So I can just drop in print film. And here, perhaps I use Kodak 2383, and I can reduce the grain because I want to use Renoiser later on. Let me bring back my camera. So if I want to use the grain, I can use Renoiser, because Renoiser emulates like the real film grain, and I can target specific color channel differently, not just like a scan of grain slap on top of your image, which is like pretty much the case of the grain that you find inside the Magic Bullet film. Although it is nice, but you have the chance to use Magic Bullet Renoiser. So let me just bypass the grain inside Magic Bullet film in a film print, because I will use Renoiser on that. So for example here, and let's reduce our contrast to like around -25. Sorry, wrong keyboard. And the second one, probably I want to emulate like a digital negative scanned onto a film intermediate and then print onto film print stocks. And I can do that easily here in Magic Bullet looks, because there are a lot of film profile that you can use. For example, here I can drop in Magic Bullet film film negative. Sorry, I keep saying Magic Bullet film because I got confused with a standalone versions. So, for example, if I choose the Fuji Eterna 500T and also reduce the grain and reduce the contrast slightly, maybe something like that. And then now I can try to play around with the strength of the film effect, right? So perhaps here I can have it for 65%, and in the film negative, I can probably just use it maybe only 35%, right? So the overall look that I have is that, which is I quite like. And that's actually already very nice. But you can also emulate the lab process in between. So for example, if I want to have like a print bleach bypass look, right? So for example, if I want to put the print bleach bypass after the film print, and I want to have like a strong silver retentions, I mean, it looks nice. But if it's too much for me, if I like this contrast ratio, but I just want to divide it into half, I just want to have half of it, how do I do that? So for example, if I like this look, but I only want to have like only half of the print bleach bypass effects, I probably needs to like go out and then from here reduce the overall strength, and which is in my opinion that's a compromise, right? Because I already have my film print on 65% and my film negative only on 35%. Reducing those will reduce the effects even further. So that's not optimal, right? But now it's not the case anymore. So that's just a very simple film emulations. How do you call it? Pipeline in the old Magic Bullet looks. But what even nicer in this new update is that the math that is used for the master slider, the general overall sliders at the effects panel, is better. So for example, let me show you this. For example, if you use the lens distortions, right? Let's make it like very obvious, something like this. Okay, so and perhaps okay, let's just focus on lens distortions. I was about to add like chromatic aberrations, but let's just focus on one effect so that it will be more obvious. Tepnu, thank you for joining. Yes, I do agree with you. Thank you for the kind words. So for example, in the lens distortions, if I want to split the difference inside Magic Bullet looks, at the moment it's impossible with the old Magic Bullet looks, right? So if I like this effect, but I only want to have half of it, I can't. So probably you say it's like, why, Max? You can just like confirm it and do it in the effects panel, right? Let's do that. So here I'll confirm it, and I can see that the effect is still okay. And let me make the clip slightly bigger. And let's just pay attention to the distortions, right? Oh, where is it? Okay, let's just put it this way, because it's easier to see the distortions, I guess. Now, if I want to split the difference, if I reduce it, you can really see that there's an artifact going on here, right? Hold on. There you go. You can really see that, there's an artifact going on. It's just like cross fading between the original state of the image to the whatever state of the effects the image is applied with. I mean, that's not optimal. And although it may be a cool effects, that's not the effects that I want to, right? So that's the challenge with the old Magic Bullet looks. But now, in the new Magic Bullet looks, every single effects has its own strength slider. And if you try to do that, like the stuff that we just did with the lens distortions, it will show you a superior result, right? So let me switch my camera back and let me switch my layout. Okay, now let me share my screen. And yeah, so now we are in Resolve, right? Because, Magic Bullet Looks lives everywhere. You can use it in DaVinci Resolve. You can use it in Premiere Pro. You can use it in After Effects, Hit Film even, Final Cut Pro, Avid Media Composer. And pretty much if you know how to use it in one of the software, you pretty much know how to use it everywhere because it has like the same UI everywhere. So that's the nice part. Okay. So let me walk you through my test environment that I have inside Magic Bullet, inside Resolve here. Here I have several clips that coming from Ari Alexa. This one coming from Ari Alexa, and this is coming from Ari Alexa. This one as well, and this one coming from Red Camera, and finally I have like the Black Magic clip. Okay, and I'm using the color management framework that is called ACES. It is that it is preferable for me because I have a unified working color space so that all my clips, doesn't matter from which camera it is coming from, they will behave the same. All your tools will behave exactly the same for all of those single clips, which is very nice, right? If you want to see my project settings, let me just walk you through that. The color science, it was set onto ACEScct, and the versions is set into the newest one. I have the gamut compressions on, and the output transform is set into Rec 709. Although here you can really see that I'm using the new ACES 2.0 ODT candidate. Again, I'm sorry for the technical terms there. It's just the output display transform candidate. If you want to, let me know in the comment, and I can share with you the GitHub page where you can also download that. So you can like download that, try the candidate for ACES 2.0, and I pretty love them so much. And yeah, I have used color space aware grading tools enabled, and that's it. And that's my how do you call it, setup. Now I want to show you Magic Bullet Looks, right? So in order to use Magic Bullet Looks, simply you can just open the Open Effects panel in Resolve, and then you'll see the search bar over there, the magnifying glass, and type in Looks. And now if I am drag and dropping Magic Bullet Looks, I will be able to see that, I can now access Magic Bullet Looks. So now let's launch Magic Bullet Looks. Give it some time, and there you go. And now I will set my color management tab into ACES because I was working in ACES. As you can already see in my project settings, it was ACEScct. So here, Magic Bullet Looks needs to be like a middleman. So it needs to be set. The input needs to be in ACEScct, and it needs to return ACEScct as well, right? Because we are in the middle of ACEScct. So here I'll set ACEScct and ACEScct as an output as well. And my preview, I can set it to Rec 709 if I want to. And because my monitor is Rec 709. Now, if we drag and drop all the tools in the selective tools, selective category before, like in the previous versions, you probably already see that, there are no strength control for every single of these tools. Now you can see that in my exposure tools, I have strength control. In contrast, black and white, gradient, grad exposure, spot, and you name it. Every single tools now have its own strength control, which is very nice in my opinion. And it allows you to be discrete. So for example, if you want to just apply a very discrete effects to your image, just a very teeny tiny bit of effects, and then stack with another adjustment and keep doing that. And in the end, you will have a very nice looks instead of like everything at full power, right? So that's like the new individual strength control. And what's also nice is that, let me show you this. I think we were somewhere around this, right? So let me set the super obvious lens distortions. And if I confirm that, and now if I try to split the difference here, instead of having the artifacts like before, now you can really see that it is giving me the result that I really want to see, right? I should have less of that lens distortions, which is very nice. Okay, so that's the new update of Magic Bullet looks. Now, if you ask me, what is this for me? You know, how can I use it? Like, what's the benefit of each of this individual strength control? I mean, let me walk you through my my workflow. So, for example, the one that I really love to the look that I really swear by it, so to say. I'm a big fan of film emulations. I always base like the looks that I created on film emulations. Not really always, but most of the time. And I think you can really be discreet when doing that with the new strength slider. So let's see the new film emulations workflow, and perhaps we can create a presets. And let me know in the chat if we want to create a presets together. And then I can also upload that, so you can download that later on if you want to. So like before, I want to have my film print. And here, same as before, I can reduce the grain into 0 because I will use Renoiser. Probably I haven't shown you Renoiser before in the Premiere Pro, but I promise I'll show you in this one. The grain set at 0, and then contrast, probably reduce it around 25, right? So let me bring the scopes. So contrast at 0, that's with extra contrast, but I just want to reduce it perhaps somewhere there. And now I will drop film negative in front of my film print. But first, here's nice things. With a film print or with film tools, you have the different options to choose different film profile. And these are profiled after the real film stocks. So here is the thing about film profiling. I mean, it's a really tricky business, you know. Films is like really complicated topic, so to say. Depends on the scanner that you use, depends on the process that you use for profiling the film. The result can be like very different. So for example, here, if I'm using like the Kodak 2383, the Kodak 2383 inside Magic Bullet looks will look slightly different with the Kodak 2383 that comes natively within Resolve. So it's like the matter of preference. I mean, for me, whenever I'm using like film, I like the idea of just borrowing the aesthetics and not to create like a one-to-one emulations of the look, right? So as long as it's close enough, it's good, in my opinion, in my humble opinion. So let's check this other profile. Here I have like Kodak 2395. That will give you a slightly lower contrast. I think if you read in the internet the characteristic of 2395, it is a low contrast film print. And here I have 2 Fuji stocks. And I like this one. Fuji 3521 XD, and compared to Kodak 2383, it gives me a more like a warmer and result. And here I can still play around with the temperature if I want to. Maybe put it around 3 and tint, make it slightly, just slightly greenish. Okay. Now, instead of using the film at like full power, same as before, let's use it around 65%. And this is before, that is after. Okay. And now let's just drop in film negative in front of the film print that we already play around. So again, before moving on, let me just, how do you call it? Let me just see the film negative effects without film print. Let me just disable it. And here we are using Kodak 5218 Vision 2. Maybe just use the 5219 and disable the grain to 0 and reduce contrast perhaps to -15. So something like that. And together, combined with the film print, I get this effect. But hey, this is not the only profile. And let's see the Fuji profile. That looks great. And let's check out this Prolo-Chrome profile. These are profile custom made by ProLost, Stu Maswich. And I really like the P4 300, this one. And same as before, instead of using it at full power at 100, I'll just reduce it slightly. Not even slightly, maybe a little bit more. Something around 35. So the combinations of the two result in that image. Okay. So now the thing about film emulations, right? About film print emulations, you can really see that normally it drives your foliage more into warmer territory. Okay. So before the film, you can really see that the foliage behind the girl is like lush green. And with the film, it looks slightly dry, lifeless. And there's a way to tackle that. And perhaps while tackling that, I can also try to add density inside Magic Bullet looks as well. So here, I'll just drag and drop Colorista between film negative and film print. And here, I can try to use the hue and saturations and drive this foliage color more towards green, right? So I can just do that. And here, before, after. And while we're here in Colorista, I also want to make the color slightly darker, because in the film, the color are very dense. The more saturated color a color is, the darker they normally are. So I can use the second wheels, because the first wheel is adjusting the hue and the saturations, and the second one is targeting the hue, and you can adjust the luminance. So by picking up this like certain hue, you can drive the luminosity of that hue. So it's similar to hue versus luminance curve, right? So here I can just drag the green and the yellow and the green and the cyan, blue, everything pretty much more towards the center. And while we are here, because we also have the possibility to change the hue, like what we did with the foliage, maybe I'll bring the red color slightly closer towards orange skin tone, right? And maybe I will saturate just slightly the orange color. And perhaps I can bring the green more closer towards the cyan, and same as the blue, right? So the overall look, this is before, this is after. And the combinations of everything will be like, this is before and that is after. Okay, it looks slightly greenish to me. Perhaps I can add slight magenta tint onto it, but perhaps instead of doing that inside Colorista, I can go to my film print and change my tint towards slightly more magenta. There's a slight difference between the temperature and tint inside Colorista and inside the film. I think the one in film is like photometrically more accurate. So I tend to use the color temperature and tint inside the film. And here, instead of using it at full power like before, sorry, let me just reset it. Let's just reduce it slightly, just slightly, okay? Maybe around 85. Something like that. And that looks good. Now, if you see before film, you can really see that we have a deeper blacks, right? So that's also one characteristic of film emulations. Normally, the film emulations bring your black point up slightly, just as very slightly. And there's a way to tackle that, right? So you can use curves after the film print. So after the film profile. And here, I can just like target just the very low end of the image and reduce the black level. I think you can really see in the scope, you can watch for the lower part of the image going more towards blacks. So it also results in a slightly more contrasty and cleaner image, right? And as before, instead of having it at full power, let me just reduce it to around same 85%. So up until now, this is before and this is after. Okay. Now, let's do another thing with our looks. Instead of having it just like this, maybe I want to warm it up a little bit. Okay. And to warm it up a little bit, we can add color blend right in the front. And instead of using it just like this, right? At the moment, I really love it. Instead of reducing the saturations, I want to keep the saturations as it is. In fact, let me just reset it and perhaps reduce the strength. I mean, just imagine, how do you do that in the old Magic Bullet looks? It's impossible, right? So now you can really do that. And this is nice. Maybe just use it somewhere like over there. But now, if you see, my highlights is also slightly a little bit too warm. And I think I can tackle that also by using Colorista. Again, I'll use Colorista. Sorry. Somewhere over there. I'll use Colorista after the color blend. And here, so let me ask you these questions. How do we make the highlight back to, you know, clean, neutral highlights, like neutral white? We just apply a very like obvious orange tint there, right? How do we do that? Do we need to reduce saturations? Here a slightly, very slight, how do you call it, color theory that you can use. Anytime you use the opposite color, they will neutralize each other, right? So what we can do is that by using highlights wheel, we can try to introduce the opposite of orange, and in this case, cyan, right? So if I do it like extremely before, after, before and after, you can really see that in this area over here in the white card there, right? But it's slightly too much because it's also affecting the skin tone. I like the skin tone before. Maybe I can just split the difference and put it around 50%. Maybe that's a little bit much. Something like that. And now I'm pretty happy with it. Okay. Now, to complete our film emulations, there's like this amazing tools that was introduced in a couple of releases ago. It's called Halations. So what Halations do, Halations is a artifacts of film stocks. Back in the day when you shoot a project with a film, normally in a contrasting area, you will start to see like a blooming effects, and normally the bloom, you'll start to see like a glow in a contrasting area, like between if you have like an area that is very contrasty, like perhaps in this one, because you have like a very white card, and at the back you have a very dark background. Normally in that area you will have like a red glow, and that you can adjust that. You can use halations to do that, and I will use halations right in the front. So it also comes with a lot of like nice presets here to make it like more obvious, like super obvious, so that you can see through the stream. You can really see that here in this area, that there's like this red glow going on, right? But I don't want to use it like that much because it is degrading my image way too much. Perhaps I just set it to modern 35 highlights, so I can just target just the highlight. It's slightly too less. Maybe just play around with a vintage 35 highlights. You can really see. Now we have the halations in the highlights. So I just want to reduce that slightly more. Let's preview highlights and reduce the highlights by increasing the highlight only parameter. So I don't want it to be happening on her face. Maybe something like that. There you go. So now I have my halations effect right in front of my effects chains. And like before, to complete it, we need grain. We need the texture. We need the film grain. And in order to do that, instead of using the grain inside the print film or the negative film, I mean, you can use that. You know, you can introduce a very slight grain with this film tools, and it will also looks nice because it will be happening before the Renoiser, right? So for me, I like to just use Renoiser, and let's just put Renoiser right at the end. And here in Renoiser, you can really see that there is a control to target the red, green, and blue, or you can also target the size of red, green, and blue grains, and that means like you can increase the size and then the amount of those grain in the red channel or the green channel or the blue channel of your image, which is very nice. And you can also target specific area of your image. Like if you want less grain in the highlights, less grain in the shadow, but more grains in the midtone, you can simply target that, right? And normally in film, there's like the grain normally happens there are more grains in the blue channel, right? And we can do that manually, or we can just use the preset that come with a Renoiser. So for example here, let me just use this modern 35 presets. It's a very, how do you call it, discrete grain, so to say, very subtle. So if I disable the grain, you don't see anything on her face, but I don't know if it shows through the stream. Let me just zoom in again. There you go. And you also have the options to use like a color grain, so you can see that there's a red, green, and blue, or you can also just use the monochrome grain. And in this case, let's just stay with the color grain. Zoom out, and here, after doing so, let me just, while we're in Renoiser, there's also a control to increase sharpness of your image. So you can sharpen just a little bit just before the grain is applied, right? So I like to do that. And let's just increase the sharpening very slightly, something like that. Maybe 15 is good. And then now I have my looks, okay? And that's pretty much the looks that we create together. And it's not very, how do you call it? It's not very Control F. So this is with the look, and this is without the look. It's not very obvious, so to say. It's not very heavy look. So now I can save this look that we create together in as a new presets, right? Let's create this presets. And let's select the folder. And what do we call the preset, guys? Max on color, film, warm, something like this, right? And now, if we open our presets, looks, and go to the custom, and you'll see that the new preset should be there. Where is it? Where is it? Max on color, film, warm. There you go. That's the look that we just create. Okay. So let's go back. Now, Oystein, I'm sorry if I don't pronounce your name right in the chat, is asking, do you have profile for Blackmagic camera in this update? I don't think so, not yet. But the team is looking for it. And I think there is also an available, how do you call it, Blackmagic in the Blackmagic input, how do you call it here in OCIO with in the new OCIO config. But I don't know for sure. I heard something like that, and but you know, at this moment in this update, there's still no how do you call it, profile for Blackmagic camera yet. But then if you're using it, I do understand though, it can be a problem if we are using like Magic Bullet looks in Premiere Pro, for example, because the OCIO config at the moment, the input is not supporting the Blackmagic, how do you call it, input device transform, right? The IDT for Blackmagic camera. But if you're using it in Resolve, there are plenty of it. The only workaround, one of the workaround that I can think of that is that probably you can use you can bake your own LUT in Resolve using the IDT in Resolve, and then after that you can export LUT and try to use that LUT in Premiere Pro, for example. And that's just something that I think, but I haven't tested. So if you want to, you can try that and let me know if it's working. Okay. And yeah, sorry, my mic. There you go. I hope it's better now. Yeah, this is like the film emulation that we just create together, right? Now with this strength slider, there are also like opportunity to create another like type of looks. For example, we know that with films there are some characteristic that we really like, right? So for example, with film, one of the characteristic that we normally see is that it has like a very soft highlight roll-off, and you can create highlight roll-off in Magic Bullet looks now, for example, because now we have the strength slider, and we can be a little bit discreet in our adjustment. So for example, if we like the look of film, but we don't want to change the color primaries, we just want to soften the highlights a little bit, so we can still have like the transformations done by ACES, and it looks like this, neutral. But then if you just want to slightly tame down the highlights, you can also do that with the tools inside Magic Bullet Looks. So how do I do that? Like, one thing is really nice here is that now with the contrast tool, we can target the midpoint of the image. And since we are working in ACEScct, I know for sure that the midpoint is 0.413. And now I can just reduce the contrast slightly, right? Or what's even better, instead of using contrast, I can use shoulder. There you go. And I can target my roll-off to start from my mid-gray, something like this. And before and after, you can still see that, you know, the contrast is rolling off the highlight after the mid-gray. Okay, so I can leave it in 100%. And to soften those highlight, perhaps I can also add optical diffusion and just target that highlight, only the highlight. And perhaps let's check the presets that you really like. I normally love to use like this glimmer glass full. And here, instead of having it at streak, I'll set it to diffuse. And of course, you can change the quality into extreme, for example, if you are ready to render out the footage. But for me, whenever I'm still working, I love to just set it on the productions, and then after that, work my way, grading the footage, grading the project under the looks, and then after that, before rendering it out, set it back to extreme, right? So here, we can turn on our preview highlight, and then we can just target only those highlights area. Right? So it's very subtle. I don't know if you can see that in the stream, like here. And I can also tint my highlight slightly towards orange, warm it up a little bit, and perhaps reduce the highlights only, something just like that. Okay? There you go. I think you can see that. And another thing is that with all this new strength slider, for example, we can also now emulate the look of a lens, right? So we can try to emulate the look of a vintage lens, like those detuned lenses, which normally now gaining popularity again in a lot of like cinema. We can try to do that here as well, because if you open the tools, you see that there are a lot of like lens tool here. So for example, we can try to do that, and we can try to emulate the MTF curve, the modulations transfer functions of a lens, right? So normally vintage lenses only retain the sharpness of the image in the center of the lenses, and as your eyes travel through the edges of the lens, the image will get deteriorated. You know, it gets softer, and sometimes it's showing distortions and also showing some artifacts. And how about doing that? Let's emulate that here. So first thing that we want to emulate is the lens vignette. And let us make it like anamorphic. So before the lens vignette, I have like a slight roll off there. And perhaps I can just target only those corners, right? So here, instead of having it at 50%, maybe slightly more, something like that. And I can also use lens distortions before my lens vignette. And perhaps just reduce it slightly. I want to have a barrel distortion, something like this, perhaps. Just a very slight barrel distortions. And I can also reduce it, reduce the strength a little bit. Okay, that looks great. And now I want to retain the sharpness only in the center of the image. And to do that, there's like this nice tilt shift effect, tilt shift effects that you can use. And perhaps we can also do that here. So let me put that up. I'm only targeting the middle of the image and reduce the blur size. I can pump up the quality to 10 if I want to, but that will tax my machines. So at the moment, just leave it to 3. And now we can play around with the strength. Okay. You already can really see that, you know, it softens the highlights as well. And I can also drop in the chromatic aberrations. And the chromatic aberrations need to happen before the lens distortions, okay? And perhaps just increase that. Something like that. Of course, this is, we are doing this without the reference images. If you have reference image with the test patterns and so on, it's even better, right? So to do that, you can like upload your reference image by clicking this drop down and then press plus, and then you can locate the reference image that you have. So if you have a test patterns, a shot with a specific lens, and if you want to mimic that, you can try to use that method as well. So here I just have like a very slight chromatic aberrations, something like that. And sometimes old lens also show deviations in the color temperature. So sometimes a lens can be a little bit, tiny bit warmer, or a lens can be tiny bit cooler. And I can try to do that with either with Colorista, or here's also a very nice one with the color blend. Okay. Uh-oh, I messed up. My lens distortion supposed to be somewhere like that. Okay. So I'll use my color blend right in front of everything. And here, instead of having it like super warm, I can have it like super cool, for example. Something like that. And instead of using it like full power, I want to be discreet. Just a very teeny tiny effects. Just like that. Okay, so now we have a shift in the temperature. We also have chromatic aberrations going on, like only in the outer part of the image, and we have softening, and then also a barrel distortions, and we have a lens vignette. Right? If I want to, I can also use edge softness. I can also use edge softness right next to swing tilt. And here I can just also use it like very slightly. Something like this. Okay. And let us save this. It is popping up in a different window, sorry. And we can call it Max on color, tuned lens, and hit save. Now, it should be somewhere there. Where is it? Ah, there you go. Right here, it shows up here. Okay, that is some looks that we can now create with a new strength sliders. Okay, that's the key. Be discreet. Combine all those teeny tiny adjustment, and then all those tiny adjustment combined together will create a nice looking looks instead of using like every single effects full power all at once. Okay, so now you probably ask, how do I grade then if I already create something like this? If I have my looks ready, how do you grade? And that's also my question to you, actually. How do you grade? Do you grade your clips? Do you grade your project clips by clips basis, or do you grade your project with one master look? I mean, I really love to, in my opinion, me personally, I like to work under one single look. So, for example, before grading, I love to like create my look first, use that one particular look, and then after that, grade under that. So I think it's different. You can also grade clip by clip basis, but I don't think that's really how do you call it, efficient. Especially if you have like a longer form of content. If you have like a short movie, for example, that's already a lot of clips. And if you're grading per clip basis, it's gonna take forever, right? So if you have like a very short ads for 10 seconds or something like that, perhaps you can still do that, working clip by clip basis. But then if you have like just a, I don't know, 10 minutes short film, I would recommend you to, create a master look, put it on the timeline, and then after that, grade under that. Okay. And I will show you that principle here inside Resolve, and also similar principle that you can use when you are not using color grading specific software like DaVinci Resolve. For example, how do I do that in Premiere Pro? You can still work like that inside Premiere Pro using Magic Bullet looks, and we'll look into that later. But now I already have one timeline prepared. But before we move on, there's a question from Ryan. Ryan is asking, I have custom LUTs in my computer. How can I import those LUT in Magic Bullet LUT library? Good questions, right? So to import your LUT, in your Magic Bullet look library here, go to look, launch look, give it some times, and here you have LUT tool. Okay, here in LUT tool, you can import your LUT by using this symbol here, Ryan. There's like this arrow symbol here. It looks like export, but really it is import. So if you click that, you'll have like a Explorer windows if you're on PC, or you'll open a Finder when you are on Mac. So by clicking that, you can locate your collections of LUT, and you can bring it into the LUT tools, right? So where are we? We want to grade, right? So I've prepared this like short clips, and this clip coming from Red Camera. So the input transform for this is Red Log 3G10 in red white gamut for all of this. So just by how do you call it, by using the input device transform and working in ACES, I can already normalize my image so that it doesn't look like desaturated and not so contrasty like normal log image, right? Now I can use Magic Bullet looks in my timeline. And by the way, I am grouping those clips together into one group. And the way to do that is that select everything, don't stay in the timeline when you want to group that, because the option will not be visible. So you can select all the clips and then right clicks, and then you can add into new groups, right? That's how you working in group. By adding clips into groups, you will have 2 extra how do you call it, node category, how do you call it? Yes. Before grouping, you only have like the clips level and the timeline, and after grouping, you have like the group pre-clip and then the group post-clip. And let's save that for another episode to talk about the group. But I think we talk about that a lot. If you search in if you go to our recording in Maxon training team, you probably can find like a lot of time Diego and me speaking about the grouping, right? So here, what I want to show you is that let us grade this clip together just by using one single looks, just by using one master look, and then we grade the clip. Okay. You're welcome, Ryan. Ryan is saying thank you. I got it. Welcome. So now let's launch Magic Bullet Looks. And instead of developing our own looks like before, we already create one film emulations look before, right? Why don't we just use that? And strength here, let me just use strength at 100. I don't know why it's set to 35. And here, because we are in ACES pipeline, Magic Bullet Looks need to recognize that the clip are ACEScct, and it has to return the clip as ACEScct here. Okay, so we'll set the mode into OpenColorIO. Input supposed to be ACEScct. Output, you can select same as input, or just to be secure, let's select ACEScct. Okay, and let me open my looks, and let me use the looks that we create together, right? Something like this, and hit save. Confirm that. Now we have the looks applied to our clips, okay? And that is in the timeline level. So now I'll go to my clip level, and here I will create a template node 3 so that I will have the same node template in every single clips that I'm working. So perhaps let me create 5 different nodes, and here I can rename them. One is for noise reductions, and this one is for my exposure and saturations. Before my exposure, I like to tackle my contrast, and before my contrast, I like to tackle my color balance. And after that, perhaps I can create some parallel windows. So whenever I want to play around with the power windows, perhaps I can use the power windows after my first initial balancing, right? So something like this. And in the contrast, I will set the pivot into 413 because that's the mid-gray point of ACEScct. So by using contrast that way, I can introduce contrast without affecting the mid-gray point of the image, right? I think my camera is blocking the way, right, guys? Let me set my something like this. Okay. Now I can select all the other clips and then press the middle mouse button, the scroll wheel, to copy everything, to copy my node template into all of the other clips, right? Now let's start the fun part. Okay, and first I need to grade this one first, and I like the exposure level. Perhaps the contrast is slightly a little bit more contrasty, just reduce it slightly. And by doing that, it seems like I'm lifting my exposure. So I'll tackle my exposure just slightly, something like that. And in the balance, it seems like that I can try to reduce my red slightly, or increase my red slightly, and reduce blue to increase yellow, right? To introduce yellow in the clip. So before the balance, after the balance. And saturations, let me check my vector scope. Seems good enough to me. And if I want to, I can try to add the density, the color density in this node. And that is by changing the color space into HSV. And in the channel, I can disable channel 1 and disable channel 3. So now the color model changed from RGB into HSV. And by disabling channel 1 and 3, I am disabling the hue channel and also disabling the value channel. So I'm only operating in the saturations channel. And by increasing my gain, I can increase my saturations while also darkening each and individual color, right? So I quite like that. And now I can like tweak the image a little bit more by using some power windows. And here I'll just drop a power windows, change the aspect ratio to 0, soften it. And if I press Shift H, I can really see the target area, soften it further, something like that. Or perhaps instead of using this, I can use it as a topper. So I can just target the highlight area at the top part of the image. So I'll change the aspect from 50 to 100. And here I can just target the top part of the image, something like that. And I can bring the exposure down on the top part of the image. Let me set to waveform. I think I quite like that. And here I can use gradient. And if I press Shift H, I can really see the area that I'm affecting. So there you go. Shift H again. And darken that area slightly. And there, I can also darken this area. There you go. And here, I can use my vignette, for example, if I want to create a lens vignette. But I think I already have lens vignette happening in my Magic Bullet looks. So I don't need that. Let me just reset this. So now, before and after, right? So this is like, so before the adjustment that we did, but our looks is still on. So this is just the look, and this is with the grade. Okay, I think I quite like that. And if we move to the next clip, I can also do the same thing, right? So first, I can check the exposure. I can compare the exposure to the previous one. Here, I have a deeper black, so perhaps I can just move my exposure down a little bit. And in my contrast, add my contrast slightly. And in the balance, let me check waveform to vector scope. Okay, for perhaps here, I can choose my, or let me, so in the balance, I think this is a little bit in the warmer side, so we can cool that down. To cool that down, I can reduce red slightly, and then I can increase blue just slightly. And that is just one point here in the offset. And if I go from the first one and the second one, it looks okay. So now I can also copy and paste the saturations and go here and copy and paste. And something like this. And another way to do like the same adjustment to all of this like clip, you can also use the command control, color and append ripple node changes to current group. And there you go. I just ripple everything to the same node that I prepared, right? And now let's play around with the power windows. And here, for example, I can just drop my circular windows, change the aspect to 0, make it super soft, make it bigger. And now if I press Shift H, I'm only targeting the inside of the windows, right? I need to invert that. Boom. And after inverting that, let's press Shift H again. And then now I can just like reduce the exposure just on the sides of the image. And I perhaps can use the gradient, Shift H, just to reduce bright highlights just slightly. And perhaps change it, something like that. So everything before, after. So it looks closer already. So now in these two clips, we have a lot of greens. And in the second clip, we have a lot of like red color here from the wall, right? So it may seem like it's different, but you know, that's just the things that you need to be careful about. It's not the different exposure, but it's just like, you know, we have different colors in our image. So let me change it back to waveform. And here, let me just drop in the exposure slightly. Same as before, increase the contrast slightly, back to my exposure, reduce it just slightly. And then now the interesting part, the balance. And as you notice, like before, in the balance, I'm mostly using offset by reducing the red point, the green point on the blue point, like very discreetly. And here, let me just reduce the red slightly, reduce the blue to increase the green, or maybe return the red as like previously. So maybe slightly more, something like this. So if we switch from here to here, it feels like same, that we are in the same room and same scene, I'm sorry. So here I'll use another window to tackle the top area as before, reduce the exposure slightly there. And then here I can also use my gradient, Shift H, so that. But it feels like I need to use my gradient here because it seems like the light source is coming from here towards the subject. Why should I reduce that? I want to strengthen that effects, right? So I can do this. And by doing that, I'm increasing the contrast as well, right? So before the gradient, after, before, after. And that's literally how I will tackle. So I can like keep doing exactly the same thing for the remaining two clips. Because I have one eye on the clock, it seems like we are already over time, running a little bit over the time slot. I hope you don't mind with that. Let me just move to Premiere Pro and do exactly the same thing. But before, Oystein, how do you pronounce your name, man? I'm sorry. Has a comment. Tried a Blackmagic film to ACEScct transform on the clip source in Premiere, but the looks viewer does not show effects that are applied before it. Okay, did you try to bake a LUT and use it in the clips? Hey, Darren, what's up, man? Thank you for joining. Yes, we must go over the time. That's how we do it. And let me just launch Premiere Pro. Hang in there with me. So, I mean, we just use one look in this project in our timeline. So this is without the looks. And this is with the look. And we are grading under it. So that's the principle that I want to to sell to you. You know, why don't you just use one master look on your timeline and then grade under it to make that one look works, right? And if you want to, like here, you can still go to the group pre-clip and use this lens emulations that we just create before. Like, for example, we save that as a preset, right? And for example, if we go here, same as before, it's just exactly the same setup like what we did before. And we can just drop in our lens emulations. Where is that? Here. So I have a grade, which is like sandwiched by the two looks. One is just emulating the film, the detuned lens, and I have like the master look in my timeline, right? And for the group pre-clip, perhaps just for the lens, use it to 25. And there you go. We went from here to there. So Control F. We went from here to this. Okay. That is Magic Bullet looks in Resolve. So let's check the same approach in Premiere Pro. Okay. So let me launch Premiere Pro. And as you can probably see, hang on, it's still loading. I have prepared exactly the same timeline as before. So Oystein, by the way, I just have in my mind, I mean, perhaps if you can try to bake a LUT that goes from Blackmagic to ACEScct and use Colorista in clip level, and then on the adjustment layer, use Magic Bullet looks, right? And then the input of the Magic Bullet looks, you can set it to ACEScct, of course, and then the output you can target the display that you are targeting. I don't know, perhaps that could be solution for you. So you can use like Colorista at the clip level, and then you can use the LUT that you baked, that you create, right? And that's actually the method that I want to show you, right? The same method that I want to show you. I have same timeline as before, and on top of those every single clips, I am putting one adjustment layer. And in this adjustment layer, I will use Magic Bullet looks to convert my clips from red, white gamut into Rec 709, but everything should be done in ACES. So in order to do that, I will just use Magic Bullet looks in my adjustment layer. And here, let me launch Magic Bullet looks. And instead, like before we are using the input ACEScct and output ACEScct, right? We don't want that. We want the input to be the camera that we're working with. So in this case, the red, white gamut, red lock 3G10 output is in Rec 709. So let me set the preview just in Rec 709. So if I confirm that, Magic Bullet, I'm using Magic Bullet looks to transform from red, white gamut into Rec 709. using Magic Bullet looks in ACES, right? So that's my normalized clips that I do with Magic Bullet looks. So here, I'll go back to looks, and same like before, I'll just use the looks that we created together. And that is, I think this one, Maxon Color Film Warm. Let's just use that, okay? So I have my looks in place. And then now, how do I grade that under the looks? Simple. You can go to the clip level and then just drop in Colorista. And in the Colorista, set the control response to log. And you're pretty much good to go. The only downside here is that it's not as easy to use a lot of like windows. Of course, you can still do that. You can draw windows with Colorista, but when you do that, be aware that you need to label your Colorista correctly. And of course, you can stack as much as Colorista as you want, but make sure that you label it. Okay. So here with Colorista, I can target like every single clip. So for example, here, let me just move in the second clip and let me balance the second clip so that it looks similar to the first clip here, right? And here I'll just drag and drop Colorista. Let me have my comparison view. And inside Colorista, I'll set it to lock first. I can just bring the shadow a little bit down. Something just like that. And it's pretty much like, wow, the contrast level, it's like spot on already. Just what, like small, how do you call it? Adjustment in the shadow area. But if I want to, I can also play around with the exposure. Okay, depends. Maybe you want to do that with the exposure. You can also do that. But now it feels like the second clip is a little bit warmer compared to the first one. And that's a very simple fix. We can go to the temperature and reduce the color temperature, right? Something just like that. And perhaps the tint slightly towards the green. And before Colorista, after Colorista, right? And I think that's what I'm going to do for the rest of the clip. So apply looks in the adjustment layer, and then in the clip level, use Colorista to stay, but use lock, how do you call it? Control response, right? And that's pretty much sums up today's episode then. Is there any questions? Let me check the chat. And Ryan is asking, how do I import my LUT and save it as a preset? I think that's what he probably mentions, right, Ryan? You probably want to import your LUT and then have it ready as a preset. I think one way to do that, you can go to Magic Bullet Looks, right? You can simply go to Magic Bullet Looks, and for me, let me just reset everything. If you want to import your LUT, but make it available in the looks presets here. So to do that, again, like as before, import your LUT using this control over here, and it will bring you the Finder or the Explorer windows, and you can locate your LUT and make sure to set the input space and then the output space correctly. If you are working in Resolve like I was before, the input was ACEScct and the output was ACEScct, you can also set the same thing here, right? And then once you have that, you can simply save it as a preset, right? To save the LUT as a preset, So for example, here, if I use my, I don't know, what do I have any film? Okay. No, I don't want to use this. So for example, if I want to use this, and this is, sorry, that was wrong. So this is the correct one. So if I want to use this LUT and I want to make it available as a preset, right? You can just press save the look and you'll have this window. And you can choose the custom folder and then name it something like that. Or I don't know, you can use a more fancy names, of course, not test LUT, and save it. And as soon as you open your preset browser, go to the custom folder, and you will see your LUT. There you go, test LUT, somewhere over there. But again, like before, the input and output color space, be aware of that. At the moment, I'm not sure why it is resetting to sRGB, whereas it's supposed to follow the previous settings. Okay, so that is one way how you can import your LUT and save it as a preset. Okay. Winston just said, found something. You can add LUT to clips in the interpret footage settings. Well done. Awesome. Nice. And yeah, happy that you solved the problem, man. It's really nice to see that. Now, I think this leads us to the end of our conversation here. And let me point you out to the event page. So again, if you are Star Wars fans, make sure that you check out VFX and Chill with Hasi and Seth tomorrow, because I have a good feeling based on from the thumbnails that they're using for this event page, something Star Wars related will happen tomorrow, right? I hope that's not going to be the spoiler for tomorrow's show. And yeah, if you want to check out another webinars hosted by Maxon Training Team, you can go to maxon.net/events. And here, for example, every Monday, next Monday, Lionel and Dustin will be back with their series to make your 3D renders pop, right? We're also going to be in FMX. If you are in Stuttgart, Germany, make sure to say hi. We'll be around in FMX, all right? And if you haven't get your t-shirts, please do so. You have the links and then the code in the chat, and you can get one of this. And then this session is also recorded. And once it's finished, it will be uploaded to Maxon Training Team YouTube channel. And you will see that it will also be timestamped by our beloved colleague, Dr. Sasi. Thank you so much. Right. So that's it for today. And I thank you so much for joining me today in this episode. And I think I'll see you in next 2 weeks' time then. Right. And I think, is it going to be May the 4th? Let's check. Let's see about that. And that's it for today, guys. And thank you so much for joining me. I hope you learned something. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. And the email that you can write me is maxoncolor@maxon.net. So with that being said, I thank you so much once again for your participation today. Love the spirits in the chat. Thank you so much, guys. And stay safe. Until next time, Max off. Bye-bye.